All right, welcome back, everyone. This is the One of Nine podcast. I am one of your hosts, Dr. Andrew Ganung.
I am your other host, Dr. Jonah Casella.
And today we have a very special topic, and I lead every podcast with that because it is very special. And we're talking about failure today. And before I go any further, I want to put a disclaimer out there that failure has become a cliche topic to talk about because I think everyone already on the surface level understands what is required for success, and that is failure. So we're not going to bore you with all the little details of that type of scenario or bore you with that topic. We're going to dig a lot deeper into failure today. And I think we're going to relate it very well to each one of y'all's situations, whether it's on a smaller scale or a larger scale, whether it's in a personal relationship or if it's with your business that you're trying to start up. There's a lot of failure in each of our lives. And I think that each of us can take something from this podcast for sure. So,
Yeah,
Jonah, why don't we
absolutely.
dive into it a little bit, man?
Yeah, like you said, we're going to discuss failure, what it means to us, and how we faced it in the past, how we continue to face it, and use it to our advantage in a way. So I got a lot of notes on this one because this one's really important, like Andrew's saying.
Yeah.
So, failure, for a lot of people, this is how it works. Failure or the thought of failing can be paralyzing. It keeps us from taking steps out of our comfort zone. Um, you know, it keeps us from taking good risks too. As we're scared of the what ifs and just the stigma behind failing too. And we've all been there, um, embarrassed and ready to give up even after minor setbacks. Failure is inevitable though, and therefore you just shouldn't fear it. So this, like I said, I have a bunch of stuff on this. I could rattle off a ton of stuff and spend an hour on this subject. I've kind of broken it down and kept it rather concise. Um, when you fail, though, you have to take it on the chin. You have to learn from it. You have to use it to improve. And this applies to everything in life, whether that's school, work, sports, relationships, going to the gym, whatever. You shouldn't really fear failing. You should fear not trying hard enough or not taking necessary risk. You should fear staying complacent and missing an opportunity. At least in failure, there's some effort involved. There's some knowledge gained, and there's a lot you can take from that. And I think Andrew, you had some stuff similar to that we were
Yeah.
kind of talking about, and you sent me earlier.
Yeah. I mean, I like what you just said with knowledge gained. That's the biggest part of it. People aren't going when you comes to failure, people that are experiencing the failure always think, well, everyone's going to think about how I failed so miserably at this. Well, maybe that's short term, but the case that is likely is that you're building that scenario up in your head because nobody actually pays as much attention as you think. So let's just start off by saying that. And second off, what's more, I think, impressive to me is how somebody reacts with a failure. What do you do with the failure? Are you going to sit there and be in your lonesome and think about why me, why me? Because you're just going to sit there and do that. Then that you're going to be complacent, like you said, Jonah. And the people, every single person out there has experienced failure before, like I said, on a big scale or a small scale. And the people that are uber successful are the people who actually took that and utilized something from that failure and then were able to compound it over time and build that up. And as cliche as it sounds, like I already prefaced, it success is made up of tons and tons and tons of failures. Now, me and Jonah are coming from a place we're 26 years old. 26, Jonah, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're
Yep.
older than me. Okay, I didn't know if you're 27. I forgot when time changed, but yeah. So we're young, and we're speaking from experience where we've only lived a small portion of our life. So that being said, we haven't experienced all the failures we're going to have yet. But that being said, we've definitely both experienced a significant amount, just like probably a lot of these listeners on here who are able to resonate with that. And maybe you haven't had the biggest failure of your life yet. I I mean, I hope you have. That'd be great because then you're already on the up and up. But if you haven't, you are able to practice this on a pretty regular basis because failing in work, failing in school, failing in your relationships, it teaches you something and you are able to learn from that. And the trickiest part is taking something and learning from it because nobody wants to do that. Who wants to
Mm.
be faced with failure and then the next day or the same day go back to work and
Yeah.
and retry again? Nobody wants to do that because it's an ego check. Everyone has a big ego nowadays, and if they don't get something the first time, then they give up on it and they throw it to the side and they say, "I'm done, to hell with this. I'm going to move on to something else."
Yeah.
So, how are you supposed to grow if you aren't able to take something from it?
Absolutely. And in my opinion, and like you said, in our experiences, in my experience, I've learned a hell of a lot more from my failures than I have anything else. And I think when I was thinking about this, the main reason is because it's emotional, and memories are tied with emotion. And like you were just saying, when you fail, it's emotional. Maybe you're embarrassed. It's not what you expected. You're upset, etc. Um, but because it's emotional, you develop, or you hold that memory longer, and you learn from it if you care. You know, that emotional side of things makes you break it down, what you did wrong, what you messed up. It makes you dissect it and determine where you messed up along the way. It sucks, like I said. It makes you feel like crap. It makes you maybe even feel like you're not good enough, or you shouldn't be in the position that you're in the job that you're in the relationship that you're in. These are all very, serious parts of our lives. But the important part of that is, if you're willing to own that failure, understand where you went wrong during your dissection of it, and really learn from it and keep moving forward, it's only going to get better. You're only going to be better from that. Excuse me. You know, you just have to understand where you went wrong to get back on your feet, keep moving forward. And if you continue to make the same mistakes over and over again, it's nobody's fault but your own. And you obviously just don't care enough.
Yeah. I need to stop you before you go any further because I really like something that you said with the heightened emotion. That's something that we all have. We all have the ego. I certainly do. I fight it every single day. I know you do. Especially in our fields, we feel like we're very type A people, and we feel like we need to always compete, even against counterparts, even against maybe it's another practice nearby, and you want to be the best of the best at what you are, or what your profession is. And so I think operating out out of emotion versus without emotion is super important because if you're operating in a state of emotion, you're not you're not going to have anything productive come out of it. And you'll understand that just like everything else, maybe once the emotions subside and you'll think about the wasted time that you could have utilized instead of sitting there operating out of emotion. Like, this person thinks I'm a failure. This person sees me as I'm no good, and I'm not going to be. I can't be a good PT now, or I can't be a good optometrist now because I've failed at this patient, or finding the right diagnosis for this patient. And that's operating out of emotion. But if you look objectively through a lens and say, okay, I need to analyze what I just did, where I went wrong, and say, this is going to subside. And I mean, every error is likely undoable, or is likely to be undone. Like, you're not gonna there's no decision that you're gonna have to make that's life or death. I mean, maybe in our field there's some decisions where you don't catch something, like we don't catch cancer on a patient that walks through our doors, and then we don't see them again for a while, and then we end up finding out that we made the wrong diagnosis or something like that, or we missed something. But you're going to settle out of those emotions eventually, and you're going to come back to your senses. And then, like I said, it's wasted time that you could have used objectively looking at the scenario and saying, how could I have done better here? And so you're in your head a lot of the times, most of the times. And I think everyone knows that. Dude, how many times have I gotten in my head after an exam in college and I'm sitting there like nitpicking every single question, and you're like, dude, it's over with. Just get on with it, move on, learn from
Yeah.
it, and then you're going to get another try at it. You're not going to
Anytime.
win every single you're not going to win it every single time. And so operating out of emotion versus without emotion is so important, because we need to be able to look objectively. And if you can't do that, you need to start working on that every day. And it's going to be really methodical at first. It is for me still. I sit there when I could be emotional about something and I say to myself, all right, get out of your head, dude. Like, look at this scenario. These people are here to help you, help support you. You didn't do enough wrong. That's, you've absolutely messed up completely. They're going to fire you or something like that. Like, just look at it objectively and move on from it, and tell them you're not going to make that mistake again. And when you
Oh
commit to
yeah.
yourself too, that's also a huge part of it.
Yeah, definitely. And I've been in that scenario so many times. And in our profession, yeah, there are certainly things that can be missed that are very serious. There are, of course, other professions and other doctors where that's even more so on a daily basis. But yeah, certainly there have been times where you are questioning yourself because you missed something or you thought you missed something. And that little bit of doubt, that seed of doubt because of an individual failure that you had, if you let it, like you said, can make you very emotional and can cause a rippling effect in the decisions that you make on other patients going forward. So, and that's another a whole other topic about confidence and stuff and being confident and how to be confident that we could get into on a different podcast too. But yeah, if you let that fear of messing up, the fear of getting it wrong, the fear of missing something, it's gonna really cause a terrible rippling effect in your future going forward. You have to just take the hits. Sometimes they're gonna come. Failure's gonna happen. You're gonna miss stuff. You're gonna be a failure in your relationships. You're gonna let down your partner. You're gonna be a failure in a lot more superficial stuff like at the gym and whatnot. But you just have to be able to understand that it's not final and that you just have to keep on going and learn from it, or else it's just going to eat you up and cause issues in the future.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I also think that it's so debilitating in terms of we talked about this before the pod, Jonah, about how we let the perception of what we think others are thinking about us,
Mm.
and how that can inhibit you from even moving, like taking a step forward. Dude, imagine if we actually cared enough what people thought about us prior to this podcast. I used to be that way too, and I still work through it. I get a little bit like that, but if it's so debilitating that you cannot move forward, like the fear of just even starting and thinking to yourself, well, what if this doesn't go right? What if I don't say the right thing on the podcast and then people look at me differently? I mean, we're not going to give you a perfect podcast every time. We're going to do our best. But if we were so fearful of our failure, we would sit here and edit ours. We don't edit these podcasts, just an FYI. We just upload them as they are, because
One
like
and
we
done.
don't. And if it were me, I'd probably, before I would sit here and edit it, the whole entire thing, to make sure I would edit out certain things. But you have to let go of that perception or that mindset that you have, because it's mostly in your head. And again, you're operating out of emotion when you think that way. And I'd rather, in anything, business, in life, in my physical, I'd rather go down swinging than not even swinging in the first place at all. Because, like, then at that point, what's the point, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Hmm.
I just feel like we're so debilitating in our head first, and we're so fearful of our failure that it even inhibits us from taking any type of step in the right direction.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying too. It's like fear of failure before you even start.
Yeah.
Like you're fearing something that is out of your control to
Hmm.
a certain extent, the future, right? I mean, there's certain things you can do to avoid failing, but it's going to happen. It's inevitable. But people, and we do it too, just like everybody else, sometimes you fear taking that first step, like Andrew's saying, because you're worried about failing before you even start. And I have a couple paragraphs in my notes that kind of dive off of this. I'll spare you guys all of it, but really the the general summary of where I'm going with this is, first of all, everybody has what it takes. We all have it inside ourselves, and we can't let that fear of failing limit our success in whatever aspect of our life that is. You have to be able to take that first step and ignore the voice in your head that's telling you lies that you're going to fail, you just aren't good enough, things that everybody has that voice in their head that's saying things like that before you even start committing to it. But you have to make the choice to take that first step, activate that fire inside of you. And I'm currently reading, I don't know why I didn't read this before, but I'm currently reading David Goggins' book, Can't Hurt Me. And I've been just absolutely fired up for like the last 4 days.
Yeah.
I was like, I've been absolutely fired up about this. So yeah, you have to be willing to commit, take that first step, ignore that voice in your head, ignore that fear of failing before you even start. Like Andrew's saying, what's the point if you don't at least try? Go down swinging if you're going to fail at all, and bounce back and come back stronger.
Yeah. That just makes me think of so many things because I think I know I have so much more growth to do, but I feel like I'm reflecting on the old Andrew who was always tiptoeing because I was so fearful of that. And I'll share a brief story about my move down to Jacksonville. Is I There was so much fear in that, and never at one point in my life ever saw myself just picking up and leaving within a span of 3 days of getting a job offer. I was looking in Raleigh, North Carolina, got the job in Raleigh, and then I ended up getting redirected to an interview in Jacksonville like 2 days later. And I got offered the job in Jacksonville. Florida was never on my radar. I was not looking to go super far from home. I was looking to go relatively, far enough outside of Pittsburgh where I wouldn't be interacting with people on a regular basis from Pennsylvania or Pittsburgh. And then I just, within a span of 2 days, got a job offer and committed to it. I didn't even think once about it, dude. And there was, I don't know, I still can't describe it. There was just something in me that just told me I had to do it. And if I had thought about it any longer, I probably would have said no. And this was single handedly one of the best decisions I could have ever had for my career, for my personal life, for my spiritual life. I'm functioning at max capacity right now. I am probably the happiest I've ever been. And it was because I just took that leap of faith instead of letting the voice in my head saying, don't do it. You don't know what you're going to do. Dude, I drove down here the day I got here. I got in here at 1 p.m. and I went to the first apartment complex that I found after doing some research, went there and signed the lease. And I had like a whole entire month before I could even move in. I lived in an Airbnb for a whole entire month, maybe a little bit more than a month. You don't think fear is running through my mind when I'm just shoveling money outside of my bank account to hopefully like this job with these people I've never met before in this city that has nobody I know in? Talk about fear of failure, man. And I just started my career. And that's the craziest thing, too. I had nobody around me, not a single soul. And so, talk about fear of failure. That was a point in my life where and I'm not like that, dude. You know that. You've known me for how many years now? I am not like that. I need to analyze every decision. I'm type A. I need to think about everything so in depth. And that's the most important thing is sometimes it's never going to be the right scenario for you, people. It's never going to be the right circumstances, the right climate, the right everything for you. It's never going to be that. So don't expect that. You're going to have to be getting over this fear of failure. And I hope that resonates with some people out there who have done the same or who are looking to do the same, because it can lead to a plethora of success and opportunities for you that you don't even know. And think about it too. Like, think about a failure. I'm sorry, Jonah. I just need to go on this rant for a second.
No, keep going. This is great.
Think about times when you failed in your life, and then months later, after the failure, you think to yourself, honestly, good thing I didn't succeed on this, because I wouldn't be in the position I am now. Like, have you ever had that thought about, like, imagine at any point in your life when you failed And then you can reflect down the line and say, well, dude, I may not have met this person because of that. Or I might not have run into this scenario, or may not have been given this opportunity. And you tend to reflect and say to yourself, well, thank God I failed. Because if I didn't, imagine the place I'd be. It's not always what you expect it to be. All of us think we have some grand master plan that we're going to fulfill based off of our own like prophesized mindset. And we think that like we have this big plan set out for us and we have full control over it. And then when something doesn't go to plan, you get in your emotions, and then it takes you a year to realize that it was probably one of the best things that could have happened for you.
Yeah.
And I think to myself, what if I didn't take the leap of faith going to Jacksonville? You know? Or
Hmm.
what if Jonah, you decide to go? Maybe you could have gone in high school, you could have gotten a better offer to a different college. But it was through messing up something in high school that allowed you to come into, contact with IUP, and then deciding you went to IUP, and then we would have never met. We could play this hypothetical game all day, but you are exactly where you're supposed to be. And it's through those failures that you have to come to that. That being said, that doesn't mean this is an excuse to not prepare accordingly and to not put all of your effort into something, right? But
Yeah.
like we're talking about accepting failure and how you move on with it. So I just think that's like so important, because you only see one side of it. You only see the immediate emotional effects of the failure. You don't see the longevity of what could come from that failure.
Yeah. That's so true. And immediately, this phrase, which you reminded me of, that I've been thinking about the last couple of days, is pushing all the chips in, going
Yeah.
all in, right? You're doubling down and you're taking, like you said, that leap of faith and you're committing to it. And what that commitment means is that you are accepting in your head that there's a good chance that things probably aren't going to go exactly the way that you thought they were going to go, right? Understanding that there's going to be setbacks and failures. But what we're trying to say here is that those failures can be great, and learning from them, as well as, you know, getting better after that, or even not knowing it right away, but that failure in quotation has led you to where you are now. When I took my first job out of optometry school last year, it was in a nice practice. I loved the people that I worked for and I worked
And
with. It was great. Um, but it didn't get, it was busy at first, and then it slowed down, and there was, we were going into it, and I knew that there was a chance that it might not be very busy, and that I would have to kind of build my book up and build my patience up. But eventually, it just didn't happen, and so then I knew that I was going to go part time, and I was worried about it, and eventually they did cut me to part time, but it was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. I was really worried in that moment because I was thinking, like, what am I going to do? I'm part time. I have bills to pay, I have stuff to pay. And that ended up being the best thing ever. I got part-time job with another practice that I work full-time for now. And I love it even more than where I worked at before. And so some things are just out of your control, and you just have to go all in and just go along for the ride. So yeah, that's, Andrew, you're so right about that. And that hits on exactly what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
Um,
Let me.
I
Oh,
have,
you want to go, Jonah? Yeah.
yeah, sorry. I have actually, you know what? No, I'm going to save this quote for the very end because it's a sick quote.
Okay. So a couple of things we want to talk on. Um, I want to talk about it seems like the general consensus between what Jonah and I are talking about right now is that ego is basically the biggest barrier to you utilizing your failure as something to learn from. And this applies to business, being a good leader in whatever you're doing, being a good team player in whatever you're doing, because nobody wants someone who can't learn from something, when you're just your ego is way too big that it's just limiting you from even taking anything from type of failure. I mean, that's just the worst person to work with. You can't do that. So that's regarding business. So also relating to maybe a relationship. We've all been there where we know we're in the wrong. and you don't want to own it, and you failed, and you can't own that, and it creates more of that tension, and it's a partner who is supposed to be your, your partner. You're on a team together ultimately. Whether it's your friend, whether it's your significant other, your fiance, your boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, whatever, or even in the case for people listening who are parents. And I can't speak from experience here on that, but in any relationship that you have, ego is a dangerous thing and it limits you a lot. And it's something worth mentioning because that is a massive barrier. And I think one of the biggest barriers to growing from a success or from a failure, I'm sorry, and pushing you towards success. Because if you can't put away the ego and learn how to control that side of you, then you're doomed. And a lot of it comes with maturity. I didn't really start to do that and like put away my ego much until I learned from people above me who were operating without ego. And I thought it was extremely noble of them to do that. And they had their emotions in check and they had their ego in check. And they were able to say, that I own that 100%. That's all my fault. I have no excuse here. How can I learn from that and not let that happen again? And that is someone who is going to be extremely successful or live more of a successful lifestyle than the person who can't put their ego away. And
Yeah.
that shows humility too.
I was
And
just
you
gonna
need that in those
just gonna say
relationships, whether
that.
it's business or, yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that you have to be humble. Humble, and like you just said very well, when you have those instances where you're in the wrong, you humbly accept that you're in the wrong. And if it's a relationship scenario, you apologize and you learn from it, and you don't do it again. You do better next time. That's the important part. Not just owning it, but
Right.
then also doing better, learning from it. Um, we're going to keep this a little bit shorter, but I do think that talking at least one example about a failure that we've been through is important for you guys to understand that we actually have been through some stuff and aren't just talking out of our ass. So in optometry school, I went from let me back up. I went from high school to college, and in high school I was a 4.0. I was a really good student. I thought I had studying down. I thought I understood it. I went to undergrad in IUP, which is obviously harder than high school, but you still have a lot of time. Well, that first week or two or so of studying to prepare for a test in college is obviously significantly different than high school. And I hadn't, I've done very well in high school, like I said, leading up to it. First exam we took, biology exam, got a C. I couldn't even tell you the last time I'd gotten a C on an exam. And I studied just as hard as I did in high school. I thought I had it down. I was really, really confident going in because of how I did in high school in the past. That's another thing. And just got buried by this biology test. And it was demoralizing. It was emotionally draining too, because I was just thinking, like, I just spent all this time studying for this and I got a C. What am I in for? I have 4 years or 3 years of this, and then I'm thinking I'm going to be a doctor. I'm like, I'm screwed. How am I ever going to do this for the next 3 years and then go into optometry school and be a doctor? Like, if I can even pass a basic level, if I barely pass a basic level biology test in undergrad, those are all the thoughts that immediately are going through my head after I get this test results back. And it's, you can just let yourself drown in that. And some people will submit and think that, well, I guess it's just not in the cards. I'm just not going to be able to be good enough on this level to do this, and they just give up and they crumble. Or you can take a step back, like we talked about earlier, and analyze things, analyze what you did wrong, what you could have done differently. Now you've had this experience of taking this test like this you've never taken before in this specific instance, and now you understand how they ask the questions, and you're kind of thinking about that for the next time around. You see where I'm going with this. So obviously then going forward, and Andrew is a similar story in this instance. Actually, we kind of got together, we dissected it, tried to understand what we did wrong, and on the next test we did better. And then we took what we, even though we did better, it still wasn't where we wanted to be. So we took what we did wrong there, what we could have done better. Each time we're changing and molding and creating this template of studying that ultimately led us to be really good um, test takers, to retain knowledge, and then obviously that mentality and everything going forward in other aspects of our life too. And so again, I get done with undergrad. Luckily for me, I did a 3+4 year program, so I was able to leave a year early from undergrad. I was taking summer classes too, so I had like a semester left, but I was able to leave early with this confidence coming out of undergrad that I have this dialed down. Andrew and I and our other friends had constructed this study method. I'm locked in. I know what it takes. I'm golden. Like this is gonna be hard, but like I'm good. No problem. I get into optometry school, and it's like drinking out of a fire hose. The first week I have just general anatomy, which I've taken already. I'm like, this is gonna be easy. It's 500 slides of PowerPoint slides, and I have a midterm the following week. This is 2 weeks in to optometry school, and I have a midterm already. And I remember distinctly, I'll never forget this, sitting in my apartment in Philly. It's dark out. I'm sitting at the computer like this, looking at all these slides, and I'm just thinking to myself, scared about the potential failure that's going to come. How am I going to get through all this material for this one exam and then do this for 4 more years all year round? How is this ever going to be possible? 500 slides. This is ridiculous. How am I going to ever do this? And that first test rolls around, 80. Again, just coming off of undergrad, but we're crushing it. It's completely demoralizing, and all those thoughts come rushing back into my head. And you can see where I'm going with this. Right then and there, I'm already all chips in. I'm all in on this because it's expensive to go to this school. I'm like a $50,000 loan in. I'm like, I can't mess this up.
That's true. I forgot
Yeah,
about that.
I cannot mess this up. And it's a lot of pressure, and you start overthinking things. But it just comes back to taking a deep breath, not getting too emotional about it, and breaking it down. What what can I do better next time? How are the tests being presented this time around? And so on and so forth. You see where I'm going with this. But that's an example of, in multiple cases, of failing, being scared to fail, having the voices in your head telling you that you're not good enough, and then working and taking a step forward, getting back up over and over again until it starts working.
I love that, dude. Man, it brings back some memories. I mean, we did exactly, I can second that. We did sit there in undergrad and we would dissect our exams where we didn't do well on them, and we'd sit there and study them, and that just creates the most basic great habits because it compounds every single time. So any of you listen out there, whether maybe you experienced failure at a very large scale. We're talking about something maybe that doesn't seem so large scale to you. It was large scale to us because school is incredibly important to us, and we were in it for 7 years apiece. So obviously it was very important to us, but maybe you made a mistake that cost your job. Maybe you made a mistake that cost your relationship with a loved one or a spouse, a significant other. Maybe you are in the same scenario as us and you failed an exam, or you felt like a D or a C was failing, or something even less than that. We all experience failure at different scales, and we are never going to understand what you're going through, and some of you can understand what we're going through when we're talking about this stuff. But ultimately, how do you react? That's the ultimate question. So what are you going to do now? You failed. What are you going to do now? You're going to get back to it tomorrow? You're going to do it right now, get back to it? It's not easy to swallow that failure. It definitely isn't. It's a punch to the chin, and you got to eat it like a boss and just move on. Because what's better than seeing somebody just buckle down and dig their heels in after a failure? There's nothing better than that. And you're going to thank yourself for it. So, ultimate question is, what are you going to do now? Are you going to learn from it, or are you going to sit there in your emotions and let it control you and debilitate you? Maybe you're listening and you want to do something you want to get into a gym, you want to step foot into a gym. Maybe you're somebody who's been in the gym but wants to start a fitness account, wants to start promoting their stuff. Maybe you're someone who wants to start a business. Maybe you're someone who wants to start a podcast like us. Do not let the fear of failure debilitate you, and do not let a failure debilitate you. It's a very, very dangerous area to step in that. And remember, nobody remembers you for that, even though you think that's the case. People remember you for how you handled that. And I can promise you, I haven't been in management long, but when I see one of my employees or one of my colleagues at that, or even my boss, take a failure on the chin and own it, that is so much more noble than the opposite, where they start to point fingers and say to you, well, it was because of this. That's why I failed. It wasn't because of me. It wasn't because of what I did. It was because of how this was left and I didn't know what to do with it. Or, they should have done something about it. I don't care. It doesn't matter. Own it. Own it and do something with it. So that's the pod, everyone. We hope you got something out of it. Jonah, I don't want to cut you off. I know you might want to say something else, but we're obviously super appreciative of all y'all listening, and we're passionate about this stuff. We experience failure on a daily basis, and honestly, if you're not, you should probably start to fail a little bit more. Get comfortable with it. It's going to happen all the time. If you want to grow, if you want to be super successful, you got to fail a billion times. And that's all. That's my 2 cents on it. So
Yeah. Yep. And like you said, just remember, success is just failing over and over and over again until you reach your goal. And I'm going to end it with this quote. It's a famous quote from Winston Churchill. Everybody's probably heard of it. And if
I
you
know.
haven't,
I thought of this 5 seconds ago. You didn't tell me what
I know
quote
I
you were going to
didn't.
say.
I know I
You
didn't.
not
That's
say a
funny.
word about it, and I know exactly what you're going to say because I thought about it 5 seconds ago. Go ahead.
Yep. Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts.
Yep.
We'll see you next time. Peace out.
All right. Peace.